Okay, so welcome everyone to the JC versus Poly webinar. I'm really excited to be able to be here today to speak with everyone to allow you to make a more informed decision in terms of whether you want to head to a JC or a Poly. I know for most of you, you might already have a sensing of how or which direction you want to head towards, but do still stay till the end because we actually have two panelists here with us today, David as well as Chloe. What they'll be doing is that in the middle portion of the webinar, they'll be giving their heartfelt advice and also to just give you a more deeper insight in terms of school life. How is it going to differ from JC and Poly? So do stay tuned. I think they have a lot to share as well. Okay, so without further ado, allow me to start this webinar proper. So in case you're not familiar with who I am, I'm Daryl and I'll be your host for today. So for myself, I'm actually the founder of OVERMUGGED, and I'm really thankful in terms of watching how big the platform has grew and also continuously trying to push out content and to help you along your academic journey. So today's webinar can be outlined into three main scopes. Firstly, we'll do an analysis, a very in-depth and detailed study of the difference between JC and Poly. In the middle section, we are going to take a look at the sharing by the panelists. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a sharing by David as well as Chloe, so that you guys will have a better understanding of how JC and Poly will be like. At the tail end of the section, we'll have a giveaway. So there are 3 Starbucks $20 gift card to be won. So make sure you stay till the end to take part in the giveaway. And of course, we will leave a substantial amount of time to answer as many of your questions as possible. So do wait till the Q&A segment. All right. Now, what will we be covering? So we'll be focusing on the analysis of the difference between JC and Poly route in terms of the timeline. We know it's a 2 years, 3 years, but do you know exactly what's going to happen in those timelines? Okay, then we're going to talk about the pros and cons. What are some things you can expect if you're going to JC and Poly, and what are some things you need to be careful of? Of course, we are all Singaporeans, we're super realistic. We want to understand how does entering Poly or JC affect our university admission. So I'll clear up some misconceptions and some myths about that. But I think this is a segment that all of y'all would be very keen to find out more. And lastly, we want to talk about the academic load, right? So how difficult, how much modules do you have to take in Poly? What are the subjects you are required to take in JC, so on and so forth. Now, let's start off by talking about the JC path. I think many of you here have indicated that you are keen to head to a JC, but I think beyond that, I want you to know exactly what to expect. All right. Now, you have just probably finished your O levels, or for Sec 3s and Sec 2s, maybe you're thinking of going to a JC. So how should you visualize JC? I think for any A-level students or current JC students, they will agree with me that A levels is a lot more difficult than O levels. When I say that, you can estimate it that it's almost 5 times as difficult. I know 5 times is a bit subjective, but I say this with a lot of thought that A levels is really not as easy. So if you think you can cruise through O level and you can do the same for A level, I would strongly advise against that. Of course, the number of subjects you'll be taking will be lesser, but the subjects will be a lot more intensive, which means you have lesser, but the depth in which you're required to understand of those subjects is a lot more. So you might want to think twice if you think that A level is going to be a walk in the park. All right, now beyond that, I think what's very important for you to visualize is how your subject combination would work out. So at O level, we follow a L1 R5 system, whereby you take your language as well as your best 5 subjects, and then you come up with the lowest possible score. For A level, it goes by a slightly different system. It goes by rank point out of 90. So how does this work? Typically, for any student, you'll be required to take GP, which is general paper, which is the same thing as English, basically. You're required to take project work in your first year, and you are also tasked with taking at least 3 H2 and 1 H1 subjects. So if you want to summarize it, there's a total of 6 subjects that you will be needed to score out of 90. Now, there are a total of 2 streams in which you can be exposed to. So in this case, if you choose to go for the science stream, what will happen is that you are required to take 3 sciences and 1 humanities, right? What does this mean, right? So 3 science could include a combination such as physics, chem, mathematics. So those are your 3 sciences. Your one humanities in this case would be a new subject, maybe known as econs, right? Or economics. So when we say PCME is physics, chem, math, and econs, BCME means biochem, math, and econs. So these are just some of the more usual subject combination that people typically take. But take note that there can be variations, and of course, there are a lot more options to choose from, depending on the JC you're enrolled into. Now, if you decide to enter the art stream, what will happen is that instead of 3 science, 1 humans, now you're going to take 3 humans and 1 science. So HELM means history, econs, literature, and math. So your 1 science would be your math. So GELM, GLEM, it means geography, econs, literature, and math. So these are just some of the more usual combination. So that is what would vary in terms of the H2 and H1 subjects that you'll be exposed to. Okay. Now, of course, if you're interested for more in-depth analysis on which JC you should go to, you can always tune into our podcast, but I'll leave it as that. All right. Now, in terms of timeline, how would your 2 years pan out? Typically, if you choose to enroll in JC via the joint admission exercise, after you receive your results, say sometime in January, mid-January, you will get your posting result in usually a week or two, and you will start school with orientation in late January or early February. Right after your orientation, you'll settle down into your classes, you'll start your normal lessons. Your mid-year exam is typically in May or in June. Your next milestone would then be your promos in September and October. The reason why it's called promos is very simple, is to see whether you're able to promote to JC2, right? Now, I just wanted to warn here first that promos is not a given, which means there's actually a substantial amount of students that struggle to promote to JC2. I'll touch on that a bit more, okay? And I think as all JC students will agree, project work is probably the most painful subject you're required to do. I think I can get David to share more later on, but project work typically ends in year 1 because after you send in your report, your written report, and you complete your oral presentation, you conclude project work. So project work, you're done with it by the first year in JC1. Of course, over the holidays, if you do not do well for your promos, you're not given the right to promote to JC2. You might be required to come for remedial classes over the holidays, and you will actually retake another test in end December to decide if you would be promoted to JC2 or you'll be retained and restart your year in JC1. Okay, now let's assume all goes well, right? And you manage to move on to JC2. What will happen is that you'll begin school, and your next milestone, there will be like those quarter, like end of term kind of exam, but your major milestone will be your mid-year exam. And if you're struggling at this point, typically the JCs make you do night study sessions, whereby they give you like a lot more remedials. And of course, come prelims in late September, early October, you have a sensing of how you're going to perform for A-levels already. Then you'll take A-levels starting in early November. You'll probably end by early December. And then for the guys, it's going to be damn sian. You know why? Because right after you're done with A-levels, you're going to go enlist into army. Okay, but that's a conversation for another day. But I think this is the timeline that you need to be aware of. And to be very honest, I think there's no need to be too worried about this, solely because what you see here is very similar to your upper sec journey, right? So once you start sec 3 to sec 4, in a sense, you can kind of get the vibe. But JC is very jam-packed because you only have 2 years, and over the stretch of these 2 years, you are required to cover a lot, which is why a lot of people found it to be very fast-paced and it's very difficult to keep up. Okay, now, other than the timeline, I think what we want to share is, of course, to touch on what's going to happen for the poly side of things. Now, whatever you have experienced in secondary school is going to be drastically different from what you experience once you enter poly. I say this from the perspective of the fact that poly usually function a little more like university. In fact, you can think of it as pre-university, whereby you're not going to be sitting in a classroom, listening to lectures and then doing like your homework and academics. Poly functions more like university because you are typically choosing a certain course like business or engineering, and you're going to take relevant modules to aid your mastery of this course that you're in. When we say modules, it will involve typically certain modules that are relevant. I won't go into the detail here because it's quite varied. But of course, if you decide to go down the polytechnic path, I think one huge advantage is that you'll be given real work experience because you'll usually be tasked to take on an internship. Now, take note that not everybody would get to go for an internship. It does depend on your grades. If you're really, really doing very badly, you actually don't have the chance to enter an internship. I'm not super 100% sure of the details, but I think this is something to take note of. Right. Okay, now, if you are entering a poly, I think it's important for you to note that your L1 R5 no longer applies. Rather, you'll be taking on what we call a GPA or a grade point average system. This is a double-edged sword. Why do I say that? Okay, so when you're taking O-level and A-levels, right, whatever you have done for your previous exams in school, right, your mid-year, your end of year, your prelim, all of it does not matter. The only score that matters at the end of the day is your O-level result. That is going to be the same scenario as if you went to a JC. The only score that matters is your A-level grade. However, if you go to a poly, this is not the case. What is going to happen when you enter a poly is that every semester you will be graded. And this grade point average will accumulate and it will reflect your progress over the period of, oh my God. Sorry, please mute yourself. Thank you. So in terms of the scoring system, how it will work is that it's an aggregated system, which means your results add on and then they pile up, which means that if you do badly for one semester, it can actually drag down your GPA and you will need to do very well for your remaining semesters to pull this GPA up again. So what this means is that you really need to do consistent work and constantly perform at a high level, which means there isn't a one final exam for you to save it all. If you want to play around in year one and you only get serious in year two and year three, you might find that it's actually irrecoverable, like you cannot pull up your score by much because year one has put you down too severely. I think this is a very true story that a lot of poly students will have shared. And I think it's important for you guys to note that this is a situation that you would want to be careful of. All right. Now, of course, there are tons of courses you can choose in poly. It allows you to be slightly more specialized because if you are more into the science and engineering side, you can and definitely should choose a course in that. If you're more into business or computer science, there are also relevant courses for that too. Of course, if you want to do more media and design, there's courses for that. The modules that you will take would help you develop your skills in those areas. Okay, now, how would the poly timeline look like? You will start school a lot later compared to your JC counterparts. So yay, you can go and do your part-time work or you can just chill around a bit more. But school usually only starts in April. It comes with an orientation and a year is usually broken into 2 semesters, semester 1 and semester 2. And you have a prolonged 3-month thereabout holiday before you start your next year. The highlight here would be in year 3, because if you do well enough in semester 2 and year 3, you usually finish off with an internship before you actually officially graduate from Polytechnic. So I thought that this is something that you guys might be keen, okay? And when we say internship, is really a very great chance for you to meet individuals and professionals from the field and network as well. Now, I think this slide is one of the most important slides in the whole webinar because I'd like to address some misconceptions about university admission. Now, I think for most of us out there, when we think of entering JC and Poly, a huge pull factor for JC is that it seems as if like if you enter JC, you have a much higher chance of entering university. Is that true? If you want to think of it as a sweeping statement, it's probably true. Why? It's because around 70% of the JC cohort would be able to make it successfully into actual university. So that sounds like quite a lot of people, right? 70%. So that sounds great. Meanwhile, only the top 20% of poly grads enter university. But something I'd like you to know is that when you're comparing the cohort size of JC kids versus the cohort size of poly kids, there are a lot more poly kids than JC kids. So if you want to look at university admission based off a pure statistic figure, out of 3 people in university, 1 is a poly grad and 2 is a JC graduate. So that will give you a better sensing of what's the split. So you think of your entire batch, right? Actually, there's just as much poly graduates that are entering university, and this is an increasing trend. Now, having said that, I need everybody here to be very mindful that just because you go to a JC, it doesn't guarantee that you enter a university. If you enter a JC, you still have to be doing very well in order for you to enter uni. Same for poly graduates. Of course, by the time you enter your course, you have a better idea of what's your GPA or what's your rank point that you need to enter a certain course. Of course, all of this information can be found online or in the article that we have sent out. But what I'm trying to say here is that regardless of whether you're planning to head to JC or poly, university admission is limited, and it's limited to really those that perform well, regardless of which path they choose. Okay, so I hope this clears up some misconception about, oh, go JC means confirm can go uni. No, that's not true. I have plenty of friends that were not able to make it to university after they finished their A-levels because they didn't do well. And I see equally as many poly graduates entering university and acing their course purely because they have the relevant experience and expertise in the course that they're pursuing. Okay, so of course, I'll be happy to address more of these concerns later on, but I thought that this is something that is very important for everybody to know. All right. Now, to sum up, I think some things that you would want to take note of is the pros and cons of each. I think this is something you want to think about regardless whether you have already decided to enter either one of your post-secondary options. Now, if you chose to go with JC, the advantage is obviously it's only taking 2 years, right? So 2 years is relatively shorter. You can proceed on with your university thereafter. Something that you can take comfort in for JC is that it's going to be quite similar to your school life in secondary school, which means you have a fixed timetable, you go to school at a certain time, you follow your timetable, and then after school, there's CCA, it's something that I think you'll be quite comfortable with. It won't be too drastic of a change. And the best news is that 70% of the cohort will make it on to university. So a lot of your friends, you'll see them in JC, you'll see them in uni again. Now, what are some cons of JC? You need to acknowledge that academic load is going to be quite difficult, which means it's not going to be as easy as O-level. In fact, it's going to be a lot more difficult because in that sense, you are actually competing. At O-level, the IP kids are not around, but now the IP kids are added back into the mix. So the competition level you will expect is a lot higher. Now, of course, retaining is a possibility. I wouldn't say it's a very big number, but it's a substantial enough concern that you would want to think about as you take your decision to enter a JC. Of course, the timetable is very structured, which means you don't have as much flexibility to do what you want. Think of yourself as an extended 2 years in secondary school, just that now is going to be a lot more intense. Now, if you choose to go to poly, what is going to happen is that it's going to be very different. First thing first, you don't have to wear a uniform, right? Please don't wear a uniform, okay? Your friends will laugh at you. This is because poly function a lot more like a university school environment, whereby you are free to express your own individuality. And I think one of the big pointers here is that instead of just cramming notes and study in terms of academics, like you are looking at the concept and the textbook and the notes all the time, the learning is a lot more hands-on with more emphasis on project work and presentations. I would confidently say that what you study and do in poly is a lot more aligned with what you actually do next time when you go to work. Because in work, right, they're not going to ask you to solve the question using freaking like standard template and answering techniques, right? That is more for exams, right? So exam skills are useful because you still need them in uni. But when you go out into the workforce, it's a lot more on your soft skills, how you present yourself, how you communicate, and how you have real relevant experience, which of course you'll get if you go on for your internship when you're in poly. Now, there are some drawbacks to poly that we need to acknowledge, which is that you have to be the top 20% of your poly cohort to enter a local university. I know 20% doesn't sound like a lot, but typically only the cream of the crop will make it. Furthermore, it's a 3-year timeline. You can think of it as a pro or con, I think up to you. And you have to remember that every single semester matters, which means if you screw up for one semester, it could really drag down your GPA and you might not make it to uni. In other words, you need to be very consistent and you need to be very tedious about the maintaining your grades and keeping it afloat. Okay, so I think having said that, I hope that everybody here have a better idea of what the JC life is going to be like and the poly life is going to be like. But of course, I think what I like to shout out is that for everybody listening, I wanted to give you my brief advice in terms of like whether I advise you to go to a JC or poly. Okay, now of course it depends on individual, but if you're okay with the academic grind, which means you're okay with sitting down 8 hours and studying nonstop, and if you also have very little idea of what you want to do yet, not saying that you don't know what to do, but at the moment you haven't thought about it, and you are quite certain that you want to enter uni, JC might seem like the more practical choice for you. Of course, it comes with its cons, but these 2 years in which you slog it out might be worth it because it sets you up with a slightly easier trajectory. Okay, with that being said, I'm not saying that poly is worse or what, but I'm saying it's different because it's more suitable for individuals which prefer a bit more hands-on learning, which means you're not so much about the books, you're not so much about studying in the library for 8 hours. You prefer to have very wholesome and holistic sort of development in terms of you as a person, engaging in discussions and building a project or building up a case study which you are passionate about. I think this is where poly gives a very distinct advantage because you get a lot of real life work experience, and that is adding on to the people that you meet, which are very likely going to be in the same industry that you work in the future. Now, for poly graduates, if I were allowed to share this, is that I myself, I took the JC route. When I entered university, I had a lot of classmates that were from poly. Something that my poly classmate had that I didn't have is that they had already a lot of very useful skill sets, and they have a lot of knowledge on the existing course already. So when they entered uni, they actually had a very great head start, and they tend to perform a lot better compared to their JC peers, because the JC peers were more into the academic rigor of exams and stuff, but for themselves, they are already well acquainted. They even have real work experience to boost. So when it came to doing the courses and stuff, they're usually the one that's leading the way because they have a lot more experience. So that is something that JC is not able to provide. And that's something that I think poly has a very distinct advantage in. Okay, so with that being said, I hope that by now, if you are still a little stuck and you're not too sure which path to go to, hopefully through the sharing that I've just went through, you have a slightly better idea on which one is more suitable for you. Of course, nothing is better than hearing it from actual JC and poly students themselves. So I'm going to give the next 5 to 10 minutes and pass it over to David. So just to do a very brief introduction, okay, David is currently a student in VJC, and he'll be here today to share more about his JC life. Of course, right now, he's done with his JC1 and is moving to JC2. And if any of you have any questions, I think you can type in the chat. Maybe we'll answer 1 to 2 of them. But you can leave most of your questions to the Q&A section at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I think I'll pass on the time to David. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay. So hi everyone, my name's David. So as what Daryl said, I'm a PCME student in VJC. In case you're wondering what the School of Science and Technology Singapore is, I'll just talk a little bit about it. So first of all, everyone here is older than the school, confirm plus short. Okay. It's a very new school. But for all sakes and purposes, just think of it like a regular secondary school because we take O levels. So the majority of us, all of us took O levels as well. Yeah. So Daryl, of course, asked me to prepare some things to talk about, and I will be talking about kind of these questions here, as well as some of my own takes and experiences in my first year at VJC. Okay, I would like to add a disclaimer first that I'm only one student out of like 700 plus in the current JC1 cohort. And definitely, my experience is only one experience. If you ask any other VJC student, they'll probably have at least something a little bit different to tell you. Yeah, okay, so let's dive straight into it. Okay. So first question, how to prep for JC, what to study beforehand? Honestly, when I saw this question, I was thinking to myself, okay, I feel you're a bit mad if you want to study for JC after O levels. Okay, I'll say it straight. You're a bit mad if you want to study for JC after O levels, straight after O levels. Okay, you should take a break. I will not deny that if you want to study and go ahead with it, you will get a bit of an advantage, but over the 2 years, the advantage will disappear very quickly because everyone in JC knows how to study. Everyone in JC will hit the books every day, no question. Okay, but if you really want to study beforehand, the 3 top tips that I can give you is, first of all, or at least if you're a science student, so the first is more for the science stream. You have to get good with your foundations. You have to get really good with your foundations, especially for your cohort this year, because I believe they took out the common last topic again as well. So for those taking the O-level for those taking the O-level track, if they took out organic chemistry for you and you're taking H2 chemistry in JC, kind of good luck to you, because that is quite a substantial amount of the subject, and it is quite difficult lah. So make sure to have a good foundation for that. The second tip is to improve your writing speed. Okay, if you thought okay, so I know all the students definitely would have taken humanities exam before. If you thought that maybe your hand was like aching a bit after the exam, or like my whole arm is like sore, that kind of thing, right? Okay, congratulations to you. The JC route, regardless of whatever subject you pick, will cause sore arms after every exam. Especially if you don't practice stuff like good posture or whatever, or you don't know what you're writing and you just write a lot. So the second tip I have is to A, practice good posture, and B, please increase your writing speed. A lot of students thought that their writing speed was good when they first came in JC, but probably by the end of the year, by promos, I think at least for my class, everyone at least double their writing speed. Yeah, so it's a very big jump. And that's also something you can practice on. Yeah, and the third thing I want to talk about is I took some notes for this. Okay, so the third thing I want to talk about is just go read up on the news lah. If you're definitely going to take general paper or knowledge and inquiry, so reading the news is very important. Okay, then the next thing I want to talk about is the social side of JC, because although JC a lot of the times is painted as a very mugger heavy, hit the books every day kind of culture, I would also like to stress that being able to balance yourself like well in your social life is actually quite key, because even in my own class, there were 1 or 2 people that actually didn't manage that aspect of their life too well. And then what ended up happening was that although on paper they were good in the subjects, right, they actually faltered during promos because of something that hit them at the last moment in the social circle. It was actually terrible for them, because they thought they could perform so much better, but it's just something that they didn't expect. Yeah, so please make sure that if you want to go to JC, make sure to up your social game. If you're not too sure how, I'll be honest, I also don't really know how best to explain it either. So all I can say is just go into JC and do your best to adapt. Yeah, okay. Okay, then I'll just quickly touch on 2 more things. So the difference between JC and secondary school. So for me, although Daryl said that the difficulty between secondary school and JC was like 5 times, right? For me, I felt it was 8 times, eight times more difficult. This partly because everyone, on top of doing their academics, of course, is also trying to push some other aspect of their lives. So, for example, even in my class, everyone will have like some other background skill that or hobby that they're very willing to share about. So we got photographers, video editors, DJs, mahjong players. Yeah, I guess you can count mahjong players as well. Yeah, and honestly, all these extra skills that they continue to build up behind them as well, and they continue to maintain and they can show results for it, is what I feel makes this difficulty even larger. And finally, how much spare time each week? Do we have spare time? Good question. No, I'm just kidding. If you really manage yourself good enough, on your best days, you can probably leave school at like maybe 7 or 8, go home, shower, and like watch Netflix for the rest of the night. On bad days or like average days, you probably leave at the same time, but you probably spend maybe 1 or 2 more hours at home mugging or something, and then you only have like 1 hour left. Yeah. And then I think that that concludes my quick sharing of my JC experience so far. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll pass the time back to you, Daryl.
Hey, thanks, David, for sharing. I'm sure many of you that are hearing to David might feel a little scared, but don't worry, it all comes with the whole idea of like you adapt lah. I think you all might have some questions for David too, but let's leave that till the end at the Q&A segment, where you can direct your question to David, and I think he'll be more than happy to address most of them. Okay, so now running over from the JC side, we're going to move over to the Poly side. So Poly here with us today is Chloe. So Chloe is from Nian, and I think she has a lot to share about JC as well. So welcome, Chloe.
Okay, I'm
Okay, hello. So basically, I'm Chloe, and I'm a year 0 student from Business Studies in Nian Polytechnic. I was from Nian Secondary, and I was from the normal academic stream. So y'all might not know what is year 0, but I'll explain that later on. So I basically took art, combined physics and chem, and elective geography. And yeah, okay. So basically, year 0 is something called the PFP program. It's a Poly Foundation program, and it means like it gives a chance to the normal academic students who get EMB3 of 12 and below to go to Poly without going to Sec 5. So basically, I managed to get in, so good for me, I guess. And wow, I forgot what I wanted to say. I'm a bit nervous. So okay. So basically, I'm gonna be covering some questions that we received, and let me just get straight into it. Okay, I don't really have much to talk about. Okay, so my typical weekly routine. So right now, because I'm in Poly, right, and I'm pretty sure in normal year 1 to year 3 students, they are like they're having alternate HBL and like going to school. But for me, it's like mostly all going to school. So most days I'll start at 9 a.m. and I'll end at like 4 or 5. And then yeah, once I can't come home, very different from JC, can just relax, can just do what you want. But obviously there's gonna be like a lot of assignments, like maybe a month apart, like serious what's it called, larger percentage, higher weighted high weighted assignments that are like about 1 month in between, but obviously there's gonna be more of the smaller assignments in between. So like basically I take 6 modules, and only 2 of them are kind of related to the course that I took, which is about like, I have one module called Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship, and then another one is like Introduction to Mass Media, which, well, that one helps me with to like use my computer and all. So in like poly, like overall, when you go from when you start year one, it's like different from PFP. So you have about on average 5 modules, but I think for engineering courses you have a bit more modules to deal with. And yeah, but typical weekly routine is basically I go to school, I come back and I do my own stuff. Maybe like 1 or 2 days out of a week I'll come home and do my work, but after that I can just like chill. Yeah, but going to poly just means that you have more self-directed learning, and like, let's say you're the kind of person that will leave your assignments to like last minute. Your teacher is not gonna care or like nag at you to like finish your work. They won't care, they'll just grade you badly. Okay, so like on to the next question, which is how to deal with slackers or like project work. To be honest, project work is like really, really fun, so I don't think that you don't really deal with it. But okay, for slackers, if you ever encounter a slacker in your group, of course, the first thing you should do is like tell them or like warn them to like do their work. And obviously, if they continuously just like blow you off or like just disappear off the face of the earth, then you just need to let your lecturer know, and make sure your teammates help to grade them badly during peer evaluation. Because yeah, peer evaluation, I think, I'm not very sure how much percentage that takes up, because I'm in PFP and we don't really have that. But yeah, it's really important to just not let them slide, because as I said, like because GPA, it really matters, especially let's say in year one. Year one will be the easiest, and then it will just get harder until year 3. So if I had this story I heard from my brother where his friend had a slacker in her group in year 1, and she basically flunked that one assignment, and because of that her GPA was just messed up and she couldn't really recover from that. So it's really important to just not let the slackers like go off. Even if like say introverted, just tell your lecturer, and like I'm sure they will help you. Also, just scold them or like try your best not to pair with them up again, even though some of the projects you won't be able to like pick your partner. So yeah. Okay, so for the third question, is Cca compulsory? Definitely not. Okay, I'll just talk about like a lot of the Cca options first. I'm from MP, and in MP there's like over 100 CCAs to pick from. Like there's so many things. There's like all the things from your secondary school, and there's like dragon boating, rock climbing, there's all these kind of things. But Cca is not compulsory. It does not help you with like Cca points like from secondary school. There's no Cca points. It's basically just for your own, if you want to learn a new skill or like just do something in your free time. Let's say if you live nearby, you can just, do it. It just, and especially, let's say you want to join like a CCA that it's like, let's say just dance, right? Dance has a lot of training sessions, and you can't even join if you're doing badly, like your GPA is too low. They won't even let you join. It's really more of like you have to focus on your studies more than CCA. Like CCA is really just like a side thing, so it's not compulsory at all. Okay, so for EAE, I'm pretty sure you all have like applied already, but I'll just explain for like the people who are like secretaries. I didn't do EAE because I'm PFA student, but I'll just let you know what my friend told me. So basically for EAE, you have to write a write-up, which is like 600 characters and below. And you must also write for 3 different courses. It can be the same school, it can be different school, anything. And then another 1,000 more characters about your CCA and achievements, etc. And after you submit all these, you need to wait until they send you a reply telling you whether or not you got the interview. So you can get about, I think 0 to 3 interviews, depending on how good you are and how much the school wants you, of course. And after that, if they tell you you got the interview, you can book a slot, and it's a very high chance it's a group interview. So you have to be sure to you have to make sure you stand out, then just talk more as compared to the rest, just be more extroverted and confident. And during the interview, don't say anything bad about your school. If they ask you like, why is this school your second option and not your first, you can't just make some excuse and don't really say like, don't say why you rather another school over that school, because you won't get in. So yeah, also, so once you get into EAE, I think each course has their minimum requirements. So let's say like some courses will only require you to like pass your English, or like get B3 for English, and then after that you can get into your course, and the rest you just have to pass. It's like there'll be for each module is different. So after you get in, you just need to score 26 raw points for O-levels, and your place in poly is basically secured. Yeah, so that's all I really know about EAE, but I think that's quite a lot of information, so I hope that's enough. Okay, so lastly, we'll talk about the Uni Acceptance Rate. Okay, so as Daryl already said, it's like, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's much harder to get into uni after poly, because I'll just use my brother as an example again. I think he got 3.7, which is pretty good. It's like maybe like a B for every single assignment. That's just like on average, right? Like that. And he couldn't even get into the course that he wanted to in uni. He could only get into like the second wanted kind of thing. So yeah, basically lowers your chance. But once, as Daryl said also, once you get into uni, it will be much easier for people who took poly, because you basically took like a whole 3-year, like you took 3 years to learn what you're gonna learn again. It's like maybe just a bit more advanced. So if you want to make it into like schools like NTU or NUS, you should probably aim for a GPA of 3.5 or higher, because, well, top 20 only. So it really, also, I really think it like depends what course you pick. Let's say like, oh, sorry, my bad. Okay, I read the wrong part. Yeah, but that's basically it. Uni acceptance, you don't really need to worry. Just like if you're able to do well in poly, if you are more if you're a more hands-on learner, don't just like go to JC just because you're scared that you won't be able to get into uni afterwards. Just go for what you think is best suited for you, and I'm sure like it will be fine if you consistently work hard. And yeah, if just work hard. It's just the most important thing. Be consistent and don't slack at all, especially in your year one. You really need to do well in your year one. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Chloe. You say you were nervous, but I think you did quite well. Huh? Okay. So I think it's great that not only about me sharing, but you hear firsthand from actual students from JC and Poly. So I thank David and Chloe for your sharing. Of course, later during the Q&A section, if you have any questions for them, feel free to ask. All right, so I'm going to move on to the third half, which is the giveaway. Right, so I think this is more of a chance for everybody to celebrate a little after O-levels, especially for my Sec 4 and Sec 5s. So this giveaway is very simple. All I need you to do is to go on to Google Review. You can just scan the QR code, leave us a simple review. So if Overmugged has helped you in any way throughout your O-level journey, be it the podcast that we did, the webinars that we did, or the materials, or whatever, exam revision, whatsoever, maybe just share with us your own personal experience. At the end of the entire section of this entire webinar, I'll announce the 3 winners. So I'm just going to choose the 3 best answers that I feel is like the most wholesome lah. That means you're like, oh, then I go like, oh, that's nice. Then yeah, I'll just choose the 3 winners. So I'll mail you a copy of the Starbucks gift card with $20 value cash. Okay, so this one you can do it anytime, right from now up to the end of the Q&A. So make sure to just scan, and then it will straight away bring you to the Google review page, and then you can just leave your review straight away. Okay, so I'll announce the winner after the Q&A. Do participate if you want to win. There will be 3 winners in total. Okay, now of course, other than the giveaway, I think what we want to do is to answer some of the queries that you might have. So what we're going to do next is that we're going to head straight into this Q&A section. So if you have any questions, I think now is the time to type in the chat. If you have a question directed towards either David or Chloe, you can do a @ Chloe or @ David, so we know that the question is directed towards them. If it's a generic question, I'll usually take it because I love to talk, right? So maybe I'll be in the best position to share. As we are going through the Q&A, do feel free to take part in a giveaway. The QR code is there, so you can scan it anytime and participate. All right, so maybe we'll start the ball rolling with some of the questions. Let's take a look. Take note that we will not be able to answer everybody's question, but we'll try as best as possible. Okay, so let's start with the first question of how important is CCA in JC? Now, I believe this question could go to David, but I'll just start it off because I went to JC right? So I tell you how important. Okay, now CCA in JC won't be as important as it was in O levels or in secondary school, because in secondary school, you actually get the bonus point of the -2 for your R1, R5. So that had a real impact in terms of how it affects your entry into JC or poly thereafter. However, CCA in JC does not have the bonus point, which means your rank point out of 90 that I mentioned earlier, it will not and entirely will not be affected by how you do for your CCA. Now, with that being said, I think David mentioned a very important point that I want to highlight, which is the fact that in JC, you'll notice that people are not only just focused on their academics, a lot of them are trying to build up a portfolio or a hobby or area of interest working on another project. Because by the time you go to uni, and if you really want to stand out from your peers, right, for some courses, you need to go for interviews, right? During the interview, you're not going to say, oh, I studied very hard, therefore I deserve to enter the course. No, right? The school there and the administration, what they'll be looking for is in your areas of passion, whether you did anything outside of your academics that would prove to the school that you are somebody that is very committed and very passionate. So CCA is important in terms of building up your portfolio. So it's not important in terms of how it affects your rank point, but it's important in terms of how you are able to sell yourself as a very wholesome and very enthusiastic person with initiative. Okay, all right. So I think that's a question on how important is CCA. I think I'll move on to the next question. Do you need to take math in JC humanities stream? The short answer is yes. Are there any other pathways for JC or poly students who do not make it to uni? Okay, sadly, I think that is another question I have to answer, right? So definitely there are students that do not make it to university. One of the one of the top options thereafter is to enter what we call a private university. So when we are talking about uni here, we are mainly talking about your NTU, NUS, and SMU, because these are what we call government-funded university, which means it's a lot cheaper and it's also a lot more prestigious. Now, for students that don't do well, they could opt for private university. It's still a university. However, it might not be as recognized and the school fees are a lot higher. Now, with that being said, I know in Singapore, we have an obsession with certification. So a uni degree sounds awesome, but there are a lot of poly grads that went on to specialize in their area of passion and turn out to do a lot better as well. So I think don't be too fixated on the paper chase, but to focus more on what is it that you truly want to do. Okay, JAE is joint admission exercise. It's just the thing you do to enter and subscribe to it's like your top 5 choices in PSLE, right? It's the same thing for JC. Yeah. Okay, the next question for Kelly, I think this one Chloe could take on. How difficult are poly projects?
To be honest, I don't think they're very hard. Honestly, I think the solo ones are the more difficult, because for me, the projects are they're basically just presentations and just research, except you have group mates to do it with. So yeah, and more all the solo projects are the more difficult ones. Like you have to write essays or make websites, that kind of thing. So I think projects are much easier for me. Also, because you have teammates to rely on as well.
Okay, I think on that same note, the next question I think is more for David. This question is about project work. I believe you more or less finished your project work, right? So I think the question here is, let's say one of your teammates screw up, do everybody else get dragged down? How does that work? David?
Okay, I will say straight right now that I have not had the experience, fortunately, of having a teammate pull my group down for project work. So I'm not too familiar exactly with what's the process of let's say having an actual slacker on your team that really doesn't do anything. if I'm not wrong, of course you do tell the teacher, but I'm not too sure exactly what are the details. I have heard one or two horror stories where where like the slacker completely broke the group dynamic because project work is quite a long period of time. But I've heard a lot more stories of how a lot of project work groups came together, they settled the differences and they just pushed because all of them had like one thing in common, which was that the project work subject is kind of bad, is kind of poorly designed. So let's all just work together, get through this, get that A, and just leave it at that. Yeah. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yes, of course. Right. So to share a bit, because I went through the JC route as well, if there's somebody that's really not doing the work, periodically the teacher in charge that is handling the group would ask for your opinions. So you all can sound out early, or best way to do it is still to straight out confront the person and let them know that, hey, you're dragging down the group, you need to do your work. But I think in all facets of life, be it project work or in the future at work, there will confirm be slackers, right? So I think it's on your soft skills to be able to motivate other people to do their part, and also to sound out and be very fair to let them know that, hey, if you don't do your work, I have no choice but to mark you down during the peer evaluation. All right. I think quickly circling back to Chloe, I think Sarah have a question on what are poly modules. So could you let them know how does a module work?
Okay, so basically they're like subjects, they're just subjects, and you have 6 of them like secondary school, and then out of maybe 5 or 6, 2 of them will, 3 of them will be more related to your course. Like I took business, so it's like fun of entrepreneurship, something like that. But I also have to take like people in year 1 have to take something like effective communication, which just helps you to like improve your English. So it's not really related to your module, but to your course, but you just have to do it anyway. Yeah, it's just like subjects basically. Yeah.
So it functions the same in university, whereby, for example, for Chloe's case, right, she's in business, right? So the modules she take would help her in terms of being more experienced and specialized in the business course. So maybe in the future, after entrepreneurship, maybe she'll do some accounting modules so she know how to calculate the cash flow of businesses and stuff. Okay, I think this question applies to both Chloe and David. Maybe we start off with Chloe first. Were there any moments where you regretted taking the poly path?
Of course. I feel like, to be honest, no matter which path I take, I'll regret, because I'm just someone that likes to complain a lot. But I just complain because I'm just not a studious person. Like I hate studying, and I just have to do a lot of work constantly. So sometimes when like during the exam period, I feel like I have no time at all to do what I want. And especially because I live very far away from my poly, it's like I have so little time to do things for myself, and I have to stay up late and then wake up early in the morning. But to be honest, other than that, I'm like perfectly fine with poly. It's like quite fun. There's a lot of like people you can meet, and the teachers are very nice. So I think it's just that. I think I'm just like a complaining person. But yeah, I don't think poly really had much for me to complain. Yeah.
David, for you, do you have any regret embarking on the JC path?
Yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes I think there was like one point in the year when I just looked around me, I looked at all the people around me, and I just went like, okay, CCA chairperson to my right, student council chairperson to my left, triple CCA guy in front, a guy practicing crypto behind me. Oh my God, I'm so unprepared. I really just felt so lost and like so, yeah. I think that's the best way to describe it. But I think that's also the nice thing, which is that regardless of whichever route you take, there will be a lot of introspection on your part, and then you're going to come out a much better person afterwards. And I think that's the most important part and the most important skill that you have to learn.
I think something else to share personally from my own JC and even university story is that it's very stressful because everybody around you seems like they are so capable and they all have it all. But the truth is that if you talk to all of them, everybody have their insecurities. They're not confident in something that you might be very good in. But I think overall, putting yourself in those sort of environments where you strive to be the best version of yourself is where the process of schooling really brings out the best in you, right? How do you become a better version of yourself? So whether you're going down the JC or poly route, I don't think you need to have any regrets, but rather you need to build your character to grow into the best version of yourself. Okay, I'll take on the next few questions in terms of, are there any study tips for JC? This one, I'll just keep it very generic. Be consistent. Be it whether you're in JC or poly, being consistent with your hard work would go a long, long way. Because in JC, the moment you allow things to pile up, I think it's going to get very difficult for you to catch up. Same for poly. If your GPA drops for 1 or 2 semesters, especially in the first year, it's going to be very difficult to pull it up. Okay, so just be consistent regardless of what you do. I mean, be it JC or poly. Okay, now I see some other questions, and I think this one I'll direct it back to David. David, we know that in JC, other than GP, for students who are better and more well-versed in English, they actually take knowledge inquiry, KI. Do you have any insights to share on that?
Okay, so unfortunately, VJ does not have a KI department. From what I heard, EJ took our KI teacher when they set up EJ. But from what I understand, because I talked to a friend who took KI in NJ, is that KI really is just a lot more introspective. It's a lot more difficult. I mean, I couldn't really get too many details out of him, but as I was talking with him, I realized that if you're the kind of person that wants to go for KI, already you should be quite an introspective person. You should always be questioning things. Yeah, it's just KI and GP KI is just a harder version of GP lah. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say.
I think for those who are keen, after you enter JC, you'll be given a briefing. I think that's when you can find out a lot more information whether you're keen to take KI. Okay, I see this very good question from S, and I think I wanted to share a bit on this as well. If you took combined science at O levels, okay, can you still go to a JC science stream, right? So this one is very important, and I want to be very delicate in terms of how I do this. H2 Chem, H2 Physics, H2 Bio, most of the content is a build-up from your O-level syllabus. So O-level syllabus, you let it evolve from a Pikachu to a Raichu. That's what you're doing at A-levels. Now, if you took combined science, can you still go to science stream? The answer is yes, you can. But you need to acknowledge that it's going to be a lot steeper because there are a few chapters that were excluded from the combined science syllabus that you're required to know at H2. So in that sense, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you. Certain schools do offer what they call a bridging course to help you close the gap, but you need to know you have to put in double, if not triple the work, because your pure science counterparts have already learned those chapters and they have done the exam on it while you're learning it fresh. So is it can or cannot? Can, but you need to be very careful that it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to adapt. And of course, even if you took triple science in school, if you really want to go to the art stream, you can still do it. But the advice here is the same, because for students that took more humanities back in secondary school, they have already built their foundation. So if you decide to switch, can is can, but you need to be prepared that it's going to be a lot tougher in terms of managing the load. Okay, let's take a look at some other questions. Chloe, do you have any tips for people that are struggling with presentations and speaking and stuff? What advice will you give to them?
Okay, well, as you can see, I was struggling just now. So to be honest, okay, for presentations, right, I can't really tell you how to like calm down because it's really scary. But after you have done like so many presentations, because I'm from business, I have to do so many presentations. After a while, it will just like, it's like your nervousness will just die. It's like you don't feel it anymore. But obviously, I'm still feeling it. So, but I think like you can use some. You just do the what's it called, the calming down exercises. You do this thing that's like this, and you go like this slowly, and you just don't focus on what you're gonna say during the presentation or anything. Like mainly just focus on calming down first, and then when the presentation starts, you just like reread your script And oh yeah, you should make a script. That's important also. I cannot free talk. Oh, and I think you'll do better also if you memorize your script, but it's fine if you can't as well. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I think the trick to public speaking or doing presentations is preparation. So if you feel very nervous, it helps to try and rehearse your presentations and whatever you're going to say in front of a mirror. The best way to do is in fact to record yourself. So that's something that you do want to do. So you can review and see how awkward, whether your body posture or your body language is weird, whether you're maintaining eye contact and stuff. So this is something that you only get better the more you try. So don't be too afraid of this. Okay, now we have a question from Kenneth here. I think both me and Chloe can take this. So to be the top 20% of polytechnic graduates, is it true that students have to join a lot of other CCAs and do a lot of external projects and awards, and they need to get a GPA above 3.8? So are this real stuff or is it just a myth? Chloe, do you know anything about this?
I don't think the CCA matters that much, but if you are in a CCA and you are you have a role in the CCA, like you are the captain, something like that, I think that will help just a little bit. But if you don't have it, I think it doesn't really matter. It's just a little bonus. But yeah, I don't think a CCA really matters that much, especially for this. Yeah.
Okay,
and the obtain awards, I also don't think that really matters. It's just mainly on your GPA.
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, because on that point, right, I think this one I can share because I have a lot of friends from poly that I met in university. First and foremost, I will agree with Chloe directly that if your GPA is good enough, you automatically get a free pass in. Now, where does your portfolio and your experience and your awards come in is that if you're on the brink of making it in, but you did not manage to get in purely by your GPA, they will usually put you through an interview, right? So they'll interview to choose the best out of the remaining lot. Then that's when having a good portfolio would really help you to stand apart from the rest. Think of yourself more as like an employee applying for a job. You want to show how good you are, right? What skills and what achievements you have. So joining a CCA would definitely help to showcase more of that leadership skill that you have or whatever you have accomplished. But of course, if your GPA is good enough, you do not even have to worry about such things. Okay. But of course, as a word of advice, I think joining a CCA or some sort of project is still helpful to develop more skills and to develop yourself. So I think don't join until you cannot take it, that you forget and you neglect your GPA, but joining a couple of CCAs might not be a bad idea. Okay. I think the next question, I'll direct it to David. How often are you academically tested in the form of quizzes and mock papers leading up to your end of year exam?
Okay, so for JC, there aren't any graded mini quizzes that directly calculate in your final promotion criteria, of course. But we do still get mini tests. Okay, for VJC, on my side, I know that for chemistry at least, they will always do a quick MCQ test after every topic. And then for physics, after they cover like 2 or 3 topics, they'll do like a 40-mark, 40-mark MCQ and open-ended tests. Usually it's not that difficult, but obviously the thing is most of the time you probably wouldn't have that much time to study for it. So it's really a test of, okay, how much have you learned and like what areas do you need to catch up on? Yeah. And for econs and GP, there will be proper assignments and tests in class as well. But really the purpose of those tests is to try and make sure that is to just try and find your mistakes and improve on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are some questions about some of the subjects in JC. So here we have a thing whereby we call it a hybrid stream, which means you take 2 humanities and 2 science. Is it better? Is it worse? How is it different? The difference is that you'll be taking 2 humans and 2 science. Okay, with that being said, it's a slightly more rare combination. It doesn't mean it does not exist, it does. But some things you need to consider is if you choose this hybrid stream, you need to acknowledge that your timetable is going to be a bit different, because compared to your normal class, you might have a class out of nowhere and your whole timetable will be a mess. On top of that, you really need to invest just as much effort into your humans and science. Is it better or not? It really depends on individual. Okay. Now, of course, I think that there are a lot of questions in terms of how competitive JC is like. Is it very elitist, and stuff? I think it really depends on the people you mix with, as well as who you surround yourself with, right? So if the people you surround yourself with are all the super competitive kind, then you're bound to feel that JC environment is going to be like that. I think this doesn't only apply to JC. I think it applies to poly as well, because there are a lot of high achievers in poly that really grind it out, and their portfolio and resume is like gao gao. It's like, wow, everything, leadership, everything, right? It really depends on who you surround yourself with. And I think that applies to all walks of life. Okay. I think, David, there's one question that I think some of them are quite interested in, is that would there be a very big split between the IP students and O-level students once they enter JC?
Okay, so this varies wildly from class to class. Okay, generally the trend, at least for VJ, is that the IP and the JEE kids will mix quite well. So for VJ, you don't really have to worry. I think it's because what VJ did was they set the cap of IP students at 40%, and then 60% is JEE. So then really there'll always be quite a solid mix of new people that you'll meet. Whereas if you go to, like, let's say EJ, from what I heard, their IPs is at 60%, while their JE is at 40%. So again, that results in a very different culture. I think from what I've heard, their culture is much more comfortable with their IP kids, and I think the divide is bigger there. Of course, I could be wrong, and there are always a lot of exceptions. But generally the trend should tend towards, okay, your class should mix well, and if you're really lucky, I know at least in my case, I got really lucky. Your IP and JEE kids will mix so well that, like, you really can't tell the difference anymore. Yeah. So honestly, don't worry too much about that. And if you want to just kind of break the ice, if you want to make it a bit easier to talk with the IP kids, you can always ask them about, like, their experiences, like what they did in IP and all that, because I reassure you, it's very different from what you did in O-levels. Yeah.
Okay, I see some other questions on maybe things like attendance in poly, CCA, is it compulsory in JC, right? So I think attendance and stuff is really not about getting that tick and then, hoping that it reflects well. It's just the fact that if you attend class is important because you want to learn, all right? CCA and JC already covered that it's important because it helps you develop a character. And on top of that, if you are trying to apply to very prestigious courses, they typically look at your CCA record to see whether you are able to contribute beyond just academics. So they don't want to take in nerds, right? They want to take in really holistic people that have an actual interest and passion in something. Okay. How do you start self-learning organic chem? Wow, that is a good question because I'm a chem teacher. All right. Now, I think David shared earlier that for most O-level students this and last year, due to the common last topic being removed, not only for chem, but across all subjects, you did not take on the last chapter. For chemistry, it's definitely organic chem. And organic chem is a very, very big chunk, which you'll need at A-levels. So how do you start self-learning? I think I do encourage you to first start looking at the free notes that's available on our website. I think that's a very easy start. And of course, you can start maybe browsing through your textbook as well and guidebooks to get a sensing of what organic chem is roughly about. So when you actually see it in JC next year or the following year in JC2, you will not be too shocked. Okay. Now, circling back to questions for poly, okay, what are the chances of going to work from poly without going to uni? Chloe, do you have any insights on this? People that did not make it to uni from poly.
To be honest, that one I'm not really sure. I think you can just take private, if anything, because I don't really know, like, what I would do if I cannot go uni also.
Actually, this one I think I might be in a better position to share because after O level, some of my friends headed to JC, some of them headed to poly. For my poly friends, a lot of them actually did not make it to uni. They tried to do private uni and stuff, but finances is a real thing, right? If your family is able to support you, I'm more than encouraged for that to happen. But that's not the case for everyone. Now, if you did not make it to university and you graduate from poly, it's not the end of the world. In fact, I think it's perfectly fine. So holding a diploma in your area of expertise actually gives you a very good start heading into the workforce. Now, I need everybody here to realize, right, that getting a university degree doesn't equate to you getting a good job, right? When you're thinking of jobs and like your future and stuff, I know that there's a very strong notion that getting a degree do set you up. I think there are some merits to it, but I think what's most important is you need to realize once you eventually enter the workforce when you're a true adult, what matters more is about your work experience as well as who you know, right? The networking portion. None of this can be covered by holding a certificate. Now, some unspoken benefits of going to university will include that you get to know more people, right? You'll know people in the same industry, and I think that helps a lot. And uni just gives you more of a safe space to develop yourself further. But going through a diploma route also guarantees that you have the relevant skill set. But after the first or second year in the workforce, what happens after? Nobody's going to care whether you're uni or degree or like poly grad. They don't care. What they care about is who you are as a person, how well you do your work and your work ethic and your personality and your soft skills. So don't be too obsessed with does this matter? Do I need to chase the cert or not? Focus on developing yourself, right? If you develop yourself to be a really awesome colleague to work with, trust me, people are not going to care what uni or what poly you came from. All they're going to care is that you are an awesome person to work with and they want to hire you. Okay, so I hope that I get that out of the way. Don't be too caught up in the certificate chasing. Okay. Let's take a look at some remaining questions. Before I think we would stop the Q&A. Maybe I'll just go on for another 5 minutes. Let's see if there's any good questions. Okay, Geraldine has a very important question, right? Can a JC student switch over to poly if they cannot clear their promos? And if A-level results not good enough, can you switch to a poly? The answer is yes, and the answer is quite common. So I remember in my first year in JC, everybody was struggling. That's the truth, Normally in secondary school, you are used to getting A and B, right? Trust me, the A and B, right, is the equivalent of getting a pass, which is an E, or you fail in JC. So in JC, it's about, hey, do you pass the test or not? It's not about whether you got an A for the test or not. And truth be told, I think a lot of people, they do struggle when they enter JC because of the drastic change in the pace and the fact that everybody feels so hardworking and so smart. So you find yourself at the bottom of the barrel. So that is pretty scary a thought. And I have a lot of friends that after the first year in JC, they actually decide to drop out entirely and to join a poly. With that being said, I don't think it was something good or bad. It's just their nature of their choice. You could say that they wasted 1 year, but I'll say they spent 1 year to try to see if they can assimilate into a JC, which they found to be unsuitable, and they decide to opt out. There's just as many students that after A-levels, they get their results, they realize they can't go anywhere, and they decide that, hey, at minimum, I need to get a diploma, and they went on to do poly. I think that is quite common as well. While I won't say that's the bulk, normally if you want to switch to poly, I think after year 1, you should know and you should get that sign already. All right. So with that being said, don't think of going to a poly as a downgrade. Like I said, it's more of the learning environment being very different. If you ask me truly whether I enjoyed JC, I would say no. Okay, I hated it because it's really very tough. But it got me to the course I wanted in uni, and I think the grind in JC was worth it. But that being said, I had just as many friends from poly that enjoyed their 3 years of studies in poly and made it into the exact same uni course as me. And when they started the course, they were actually more well equipped and they were performing much better throughout my 4 years in university because they had 3 years of experience. So one thing to think about is whether you know what you want to do already, right? If you know you want to enter, say, the media industry, right? It's a lot more important for you to build up your portfolio in terms of what production you have created, what videos you have filmed, rather than studying 2 years in JC, looking at the textbook. Looking at the textbook won't make you a better film producer or better director and stuff. So you need to consider what is it that you want to do, and then making the choice will be a lot easier. Okay. I think I'll take one last question. Let's take a answer here. I think this question is for Chloe. So I think Parinita has a question. What is the best route for people that do not know what they want to do in the future and they are currently in the NA stream? So I think you were there for yourself. So putting yourself in her position, what advice will you give her?
Okay, so for me, right, I already knew I wanted to join business since I was in like Sec 1. So I think if you really don't know what to do, I think if you are able to work hard and like you really trust your brain, then you should go to Sec 5 and take JC. Or maybe you can go Sec 5 and then like see whether in that 1 year, whether you've decided to do anything, and then you can still go to poly after that. So it's like still a more specialized route, because let's say you don't know what to do and you just like anyhow pick like a course in poly, you won't be able to do well because you're not going to be enjoying it. Like in poly, right, the course that you take, if it's not enjoyable, it's like hell. It's really bad. So you should really find out what you want to do if you want to go poly. But if not, you just go JC and like try your best and just work hard. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have one last question before we move on to the final segment here. For those that haven't taken part in the giveaway, please do, because I'm going to close the selection for the winner in the next couple of minutes. Okay, last question, I think for me, bah. Sorry, David, I wanted to give it to you, but I feel like the question better for me. Okay, you can share if you have any insights. So Yumin asked if he's interested in the science faculty and he already know what course to take, is it better to go to JC or poly? Okay, so this one I think is difficult for either Chloe to David or David to answer. I think because I've been through university myself, I can say for certainty. Now, Yumin, if you already know what science faculty you want to enter, my question to you is whether you prefer studying more theoretical and academic sort of rigor, which you'll get in JC, or are you a bit more hands-on in terms of you would prefer more real-life application when studying your subject? I give you an example. A lot of students that wanted to do aerospace engineering would go on to poly. In fact, getting into aerospace in poly is very difficult if you go and look at the cutoff point. So the 3 years that they get there, they truly specialize in aerospace and they get real-life experience interacting with aerospace firms and understanding how the industry functions. While if you go to JC, you really study more in depth in terms of the theory of how physics work in terms of aerodynamics and whatever lah. So that is the difference between the two. Because even after you enter university, you need to think about, am I going down the research route, which is a lot more academic, which means you go and study, you're in the lab, you're figuring out certain angles and certain details and designs. Or are you more of a hands-on person, like an actual engineer? You want to be out there designing planes and building rockets whatsoever, right? So you need to consider which kind of learning suit you better. I think that is the most important. All right. Now, if not, I think we will stop taking questions here, but I hope we managed to address most of the questions that you have asked, if not all. There are some questions that I did not really understand what you're asking, so I couldn't answer them. But I also like to thank Chloe and David for taking the time out to answer. Now, we're going to close the giveaway right now, so I'll announce the winner in just a moment. But before we go to that, I'll just like to share some of the latest updates. So in case you're not already aware, OVERMUGGED, we have our O-level Telegram channel. We also have our A-level Telegram channel. So if you do not know, okay, you can simply search on Telegram at OVERMUGGED A-levels, or you can go to the description in the O-level channel. There should be a link to the A-level channel. There you can find all the notes for A-levels. So it functions exactly the same as our O-level channel. It's just that this is about A-level. So earlier, some of you were asking, hey, how do I get prepared for JC, right? For the damn kiasu people, right? This is the channel for you. Why? Because we already uploaded the free notes, which you can also find on our website. So you might want to start browsing through to take a look. If you're interested to see the actual content, we also have content uploaded on our YouTube channel. You can take a look at some of the topical revisions we did for J2 this year. All right. So do join the channel because we'll be announcing a lot more similar events. And we might have free trial classes for J1s next year. So around the period of January and February, there will be free trial classes conducted by our A-level tutors. We'll make the announcement on the chat. Okay, now, I think for the next 1 to 2 minutes, I'll pass the time to David because David's actually from this project known as Telescope. So I'll let him share a bit more what his platform does, and hopefully it will interest you guys. Okay, David, to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, to be fair, I still do not know how to properly pronounce the name, so I'm just gonna go with Telescope. That's how I've always been pronouncing it. Okay, so basically, if you want, so basically Telescope aims to be this one-stop platform where all the info about all the secondary schools, all the sorry, not secondary schools, all the JCs, all the poly courses are located at. So of course they're still building it up. I think they started last year. So this site was actually really helpful for me as I was looking through and I was trying to make my decisions like, okay, should I go, where should I go, what should I study, what subjects should I take, yeah, so I actually came as a representative from this organization, I guess you could say that. Yeah, so feel free to visit our IG or email us and just use us to learn more about culture, environment, and the day-to-day lives of everything. Yeah, okay. So so these are some of the things that Telescope has done already. So for example, you can just go ahead and scan any of these QR codes. So a day in the life of JC/Poly or whatever, what students have to say about their respective schools, JC subjects in the eyes of seniors. So all of these again are personal, sorry, not again, but all of these are personally narrated by students who have gone through JC and Poly. It's actually quite a wide network of students, and it's really very impressive to see such a large data bank of information out there. All any of you have to do is just reach out and grab it. Yeah. Sorry, Daryl, can I trouble you to go back to the previous one? Thank you. Okay, so easiest way to contact us, Instagram, teleshow.sg. Okay. It's the just hop on there, go give us a follow right now. Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so I think with that, we come to the end of today's webinar. I'm going to announce the 3 winners I selected based on what I felt was the most touching review. So I'm going to type the names in the chat, and I'm also going to read it out. If that is you, please let me know, and we'll send you the Starbucks gift card. Okay, so the first winner goes to Yumiko. Yumiko had a very touching and very long review. Really appreciated that. The second winner is none other than Julia. All right, so Julia, please contact me later and stay back after the session, and I'll contact how to do the giveaway. The last person, I don't know who you are, but you say my dog is cute. So my dog is cute. Who are you? Please let me know who you are. I know everybody thinks their dog is cute, but please identify yourself because I found that review was also very touching. Okay, for the rest who did not win, I think don't be too worried because you'll be having a lot more events in the future. So stay tuned by joining our A-level channel, or just stay around on IG, and I'll be announcing more events, and we'll have more giveaways in the future. Okay, so with that, we come to the end of today's webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for taking your Saturday night out, especially to both Chloe and David, who really took the time out, right? And they blocked out the time to come here to share with you guys. So maybe just shout out a moment of appreciation to the both of them. You can say thank you on the chat, and I hope that everybody learn something from this webinar, and to help yourself make a more informed choice in terms of whether you want to head to a JC or a Poly. Regardless of where you're heading towards, I hope that you do the best and it becomes the right choice for you. All right, thank you everyone.